I am someone that almost never replays games or rewatches TV shows and movies anymore. Unless the experience is entirely different the second time through due to a cosmic level of foreshadowing, I just don't find any enjoyment in revisiting something I already know when I could be experiencing something new. So when I sit here and tell you that I have beaten Dishonored 2 on high and low chaos with both characters, ghost, clean hands, no powers, and adding in miscellaneous speedrun attempts that ultimately failed because I didn't employ the bussy strat, resulted in 8 different playthroughs of this game. I hope that's a sentence that above all else I may say in this video accurately conveys my enjoyment for this game. Dishonored 2 takes almost everything I loved about the first game and not only streamlines the experience, but somehow refines the already stellar level design to make levels that I'd absolutely go so far as to say are just flat out inhuman with how complex they are. Even after 8 playthroughs, I still don't entirely know the layout of the Clockwork Mansion, and I still find paths through levels I was completely unaware of previously. However, I say that almost everything was improved, since despite massive quality of life changes to gameplay such as New Game Plus, being able to non-lethally take out enemies in combat without sleep darts, and non-lethal drop takedowns, there's still flaws in Dishonored 2. Flaws that were either already fixed in the first game or are still present. Dishonored is one of the few games where I legitimately get pulled into the world, and not the typical, oh, I'm focused on something right now and I kind of forget my surroundings. No, I became Dunwall. It's one of those games I prefer to play with the lights off and when I know that I won't be bothered for at least the next 4 hours, because once I start a Dishonored level, I just straight up become a dude from regular show. I am happily in the Matrix. Do not text me, do not bother me. Matter of fact, don't even exist in the same timeline as me when I'm playing Dishonored. But with Dishonored 2, while I was still just as sucked into everything happening, the setting just didn't strike the same chord with me. Now I knew the game didn't take place in Dunwall before playing it, and Arcane were going for a more Mediterranean and sunny feel without something different, and I was excited to see what they did with that, but considering that Karnaca has all the same staples as Dunwall from the first game, it makes Karnaca feel like a cheap imitation devoid of any attempt at originality. The city is just the same shithole again. The Dust District is just a slightly better version of the Flooded District because it doesn't have those fucking plants. Bloodflies serve the same purpose as rats, the Clockwork Soldiers are tall boys, the Nest Keepers are literally just weepers, and NPCs talk about how there's more corpses this year because of the new mining laws, but all of that rings hollow because I've seen all this done before and better in Dunwall. The first game was oppressive, but also gorgeous with its whale punk and Industrial Revolution era London architecture. There were carts full of bodies regardless of what chaos you chose due to the plague. There were factories with awful working conditions where whales were tortured just powered technology. There were so many apartments filled with dead bodies or shut off with metal doors due to the quarantine. Each level of Dishonored 1 felt like I was absolutely unwelcome, and it was great. The individual levels in Karnaca are fun, and I enjoy that you can see them all from the Dreadful Whale, and don't get me wrong, the game is still gorgeous on a visual level. Arcane poured an unbelievable amount of effort and attention to detail into creating Karnaca from scratch, and spared literally zero details. Like, I'll mention some other small things in the next chapter, but the most impressive thing to me about Dishonored 2's development is that Arcane wanted the city to be surrounded by a forest, and they said, okay, forests have trees produce wood, so the inhabitants of the city would naturally end up using wood in a lot of things. Okay, so now the Clockwork Soldiers are going to be made of wood, the floors are mainly wood, the weird giant slabs in the Dust District are made of wood, because Arcane is just that in-depth with their world building. Rarely, if ever, do things just exist in the world without purpose. And I hope that this section doesn't come across as me saying Karnaca as a location or setting aesthetically or atmospherically is bad. I am strictly speaking from a thematic perspective, because as a whole, Karnaca just didn't feel as oppressive and miserable as Dunwall, or do anything different enough thematically to stand out on its own. It also makes for a jarring contrast considering how sunny and colorful the game is. I've seen some people praise Karnaca for this, and I can definitely see where they're coming from, but I don't know. When every other line of dialogue is NPCs or guards talking about how the city is a shithole, when the sun is out shining and there's whales swimming in the most comically blue ocean I've ever seen, it just doesn't hit the same as seeing the Dunwall clock tower off in an overcast distance listening to a tall boy beneath you. Another area that I found the second game setting lacking was the music and sound effects. And I don't mean sound effects as in explosions or gunshots or anything like that, although Corvo's gun sounds fucking feeble compared to Emily's. I more mean in the small ambient things you hear in levels. Other than the Duke and Jinash's voice playing over the loudspeakers or from Clockwork Soldiers respectively, there's no one thing I can point to and be like, yep, that's Dishonored 2 summed up in 3 seconds. The way I could with the Dunwall loudspeaker sound effect, the guy who read off all the announcements, or even just that weird fuck ass sound you hear once you start the game up. Like, what even is that? How do you conceptualize that and then make that into reality? But whatever the fuck it is, it genuinely perfectly sums up how it feels to play Dishonored. Whereas in Dishonored 2, I like the whopping 4 songs, and even then, all those songs combined don't hold a candle to even just the main leitmotif from the first game. And I really don't mean all this to say that the game should take place in Dunwall again. After the first game and Dowd's DLC, I feel like we saw enough of the city. Obviously, it'd be neat to see Dunwall fully realized in next gen, but I'm not losing sleep over it. But what I mean to say is that I wish Dishonored 2 tried something different with its setting on more than just a visual level, because even in its own game, Karnaca is still overshadowed by Dunwall, because oh my god, that final mission where you go back and the streets are abandoned other than the hanged overseers, and the loudspeaker plays a creepy little girl singing and then just becomes fucking static. Absolutely the best level in the game when it comes to atmosphere. Like, Delilah can keep my bitch ass castle. She made it look a million times cooler than I ever did. And also, as a last little note, I guess this more falls into a gameplay thing, but it somewhat ties into Karnaca as a whole. Why is there still the same staircase and building interiors over and over? Which, by the way, is already copy and pasted from the first game. Like, come on, 4 years, a whole console generation, and an entirely different country in the Empire, and I'm still seeing the same entirely vertical apartment buildings I saw in Dunwall, which was already kind of visually repetitive in my first playthrough, but after 8 playthroughs of the second game, it started to drain on me, since even though you have powers and there's plenty of open windows, when you're inside a building going up and down, you'll always be navigating it the exact same way. This even applies to the Grand Palace, which is disappointing since the exterior and the individual floors are so unique and absolutely beautifully designed. Visually, the Grand Palace has to be one of my favorite levels in the game. I just love every little detail about it, from the odd shape of the building's exterior to the small little nature areas scattered throughout and the different outdoor patio areas. Just god, everything about it is gorgeous. Like this chair, the entirely round bed, and just the entrance alone, amazing. I fucking love all of the rooms in the Duke's Palace. Which is disappointing because, like mentioned previously, I'm fully aware of just how much detail Arcane pours into every little aspect of their games, not even including architecture, from things such as what fabric Emily's clothes are made out of and how they would affect their movement, making sure every object in the game can be created in real life, and using clay sculptures before 3D modeling to see how their stylized character designs would react to light, and even making blueprints of the Clockwork Soldiers. Arcane could have very easily just made the howling bolts make noise, but instead, they decided to break down each part of their function so that the sound the bolts make is generated by a tube based off a flute, the light is created by a bug attached to said tube, and the explosion is generated by impact. And not only that, the different upgrades to the howling bolts changes the color of the bug attached to the tube and the appearance of the bolt itself. Do you know how insane that is? All they wanted was a crossbow bolt that can be used to distract enemies with sound and an explosion. So they said, okay, what should make the sound? What should make the color? And what should make the explosion? And they said tube, bug, impact, and then instead of making each upgrade simply a functional difference, they made them cosmetic differences too, which you can't even really see in gameplay, and is really only shown how in depth they went on this concept art. And all of those small, minute decisions were made to create a consumable that you only ever interact with in-game like this. Arcane thinks about every individual thing, and I can absolutely tell that they are on their shit when it comes to architecture and interior design. I mean, on top of having level designers, they have level architects. But this fucking staircase, god, this shit haunts me. Now, to fully get into gameplay, I just want to say that Dishonored 2 genuinely feels perfect to play moment to moment. I don't know how Death of the Outsider compares, and honestly, until I win the fucking lottery, I don't really care to try it, because I looked on the PlayStation Store, and that bitch is still $30, despite coming out nearly 10 years ago. Like, you got me fucked up, thinking I'm gonna pay $30 for a standalone expansion, released when fidget spinners and dueling were still popular. Not even the inclusion of Gilf Dowd is enough to change my mind on that. When it comes to controlling Corvo and Emily and the different gadgets and powers, zero complaints. Like, yeah, there were a few times that I meant to run up and double jump off a ledge, but I ended up vaulting instead, but that's really all I can think of. Because Arcane fixed that really annoying problem in the first game where the ranger choking out a guard was comically small, and more often than not, you'd end up blocking instead and then alert the guard. And to fix this, Arcane not only increased the range for non-lethal takedowns, but also by making blocking silent, which, I mean, holy fuck. First time I realized this, I just sat there crouched behind a guard for a solid minute just spamming the block button. And I love the small differences in Corvo's and Emily's animations, such as the fact that Emily chops an enemy in the neck to stun them, whereas Corvo just fucking decks them. First time I saw Corvo do that in my second playthrough, I busted out laughing because it's so visceral and unexpected. It's so fucking funny. And some other animations, like how Emily uses her sword to take down clockwork soldiers. Meanwhile, Corvo, just the absolute bear of a man, uses his bare fucking dilf hands to rip them apart. And that isn't even mentioning the fact that they both have their own unique kill animations, depending on if you're behind an enemy, or if you're crouching, or if you're sprinting. I don't know about you, but usually I always ended up seeing the one with the shoulder stab and the neck twist. But even after all my playthroughs where I've done lethal and non-lethal, and seemingly done almost every possible combination to trigger a kill, there's still some animations I haven't seen before that I'll put up on screen now, because the parameters to trigger them are just that specific. There are also some things I want to mention about the different powers, which again, aren't genuine problems, but they are gameplay related, so I figured I'd include them. For starters, Wind Blast and Shadow Walk. Can someone give me an actual entirely unique thing Wind Blast allows you to do that another gadget or power can't do the exact same way, if not quicker and quieter?
Budget, etc. Oh, wait a minute, we have Wind Blast power. Oh, I kind of forgot about that. What do we do? So
also, give me a reason other than immersion and it being your first playthrough as Emily to use Shadow Walk over Possession or bend time to sneak past or take out an enemy. Both of those things would be greatly appreciated. Also, Emily should have gotten a Bloodfly Swarm ability. And to finally address the elephant in the room, Far Reach versus Blink. I am an avid Far Reach denier. Far Reach is worse than Blink because it's the only ability Emily has that's directly inspired by one of Corvo's. They both share Dark Vision, which is, yeah, whatever, and also sucks compared to the first game because it's a pulse, and I really don't know why they didn't have Emily's be the pulse and then have Corvo's be the same from the first game, but whatever. But Far Reach is just another traversal power based on Blink, and if you don't believe that Blink is better, you need a black bone charm to be invisible while using Far Reach, which Blink already has. You can't move through small spaces while using Far Reach. The only somewhat unique thing Far Reach can do is pulling objects and guards to you, which also needs a bone charm to be useful. With Blink, you can stop time and choose a point rather than just slowing down time. Blink doesn't need a surface, so you can blink over things that Far Reach wouldn't work on, along with being able to blink into free space like this. Far Reach's ability to launch you over things and carry momentum was rarely ever useful to me in gameplay, since I never needed to go over an object instead of on top of it, and it makes having to get a running start to reach faraway ledges essentially impossible if all you mean to do is land where you're aiming. The only things that make Far Reach useful is the Stolen Breath Bone Charm that makes pulling enemies towards you silent. Mana regenerates while you aim in slow-mo in mid-air. You can use it to completely negate fall damage, and also it's really great for swimming. And speaking of powers, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I beat the game on no powers mode, and as for my opinions on that, it is a genuine testament to the level design that every area other than some windmills can be accessed without powers, but also without powers, Dishonored 2 is literally just every other stealth game. Like, yes, absolutely. Using the different gadgets and navigating and thinking in a way you never have before is really fun, but also the powers are like 33% of what makes Dishonored as a series so distinct, along with its level design and atmosphere. I've also seen some people claim that because the whole game had to be built to be accessible without powers, that the level design suffered as a result or was toned down from what it could have been, which to me personally is not at all true. There's so many options and paths to approach every little thing in the environment that I just don't see how just because one of the 4,000 ways you can approach a singular door in a hallway happens to not require powers makes the game feel any less fun to explore with them, because they're all just as valid. And there's also more paths that are only accessible with powers and those without. And speaking of options, don't even get me started on how complex the black box missions in Dishonored 2 can get. Each level introduces something new except the last one, and on your first playthrough, the game manages to stay fresh and exciting the whole way through. Usually when a game changes shit or introduces something new in every level, it can kind of feel annoying or shoehorned in to create an artificial sense of progression, but that isn't at all the case. And I genuinely think Arcane have perfected gameplay with multiple approaches, because it isn't just the standard, oh, do you want to kill this person or non-lethally take them out? Because there's so many fucking options to approach any given objective in the game, and almost none of them ever feel overpowered compared to others. And I say almost because even in my high chaos playthroughs, I always do the non-lethal method for taking out Ashworth before then killing her. Because not only does it knock every enemy in the conservatory unconscious and get rid of those fuck-ass plants, but also there's nobody guarding the lenses you need, and it brings Ashworth directly in front of you. But yes, other than that mission, every single approach feels just as useful and valid as the other, and even when I somehow manage to cheese the game and skip past something, I'd still ignore it and go to another method to properly engage with this level because they're just that fun. And the level design complements all the different approaches so well. We'd be here until my next video came out if I sat here and listed all of them. So to just sum up this overall point, I want to talk about two missions. First one is, you absolutely guessed it, the Clockwork Mansion. I don't need to tell you why this level is amazing. You already know that, and if you don't, Why are you here? Like, I'm not one of those fucking quote-unquote video essayists who makes like a retrospective or, you know, movie or TV show explain video and then like 98% of it is just a fucking summary. I'm not doing that. If you haven't played the game, just go fucking play it. God, that shit pisses me off so much. Anyway, all I have to say overall on the Clockwork Mansion is that on my first playthrough, I could literally feel my brain working. I'd turn a lever and then just sit there for 30 seconds trying to process what the fuck just happened. But two other great things about the Clockwork Mansion that I don't see people talk about nearly enough is just how many lines of dialogue Jindosh has, depending on if he knows if you're there or not, the different rooms you enter, whether or not you set off explosives, what powers you use, which path you take throughout the mansion, low or high chaos, what buttons you push to move the panel, the enemies that civilians you kill. Yes, I'm still going, by the way, if you've taken damage and not healed for a while, the loot you pick up, if you destroy a loudspeaker. I mean, holy fuck, he has 9 different lines of dialogue that can play when you destroy a Clockwork Soldier. It's insane, and it feels incredibly dynamic and makes levels that much more immersive to play through. There's also the fact that the whole level is just entirely skippable and you don't need to interact with a single lever in the whole thing. It was Dana Nightingale's sole job to design this level, and she made all of her hard work entirely optional, because Arcane never really forces you to do anything in their games. There's always options even when you think there wouldn't be. And also, Dana Nightingale is the same person fucking responsible for the flooded district in the first game, so she really redeemed herself in this game. And the second mission I want to spotlight is the Dust District. The game initially presents the level as a simple choose this side or this side kind of scenario, which was kind of jarring because I know Arcane always pulls some fuck shit with their decisions. And I was not disappointed because outside of the 2 options the game presents, there's a bunch of other hidden options you wouldn't know about until you explore the level. They don't tell you any of this beforehand, but you can also just kill Burn and Paolo, find the solution to the puzzle and ignore both, non-lethally take both of them out by exiling them in the Silvercraft studio, or just flat out ignore every other option and solve the puzzle by yourself. That's right, Arcane is so unbelievably confident in their fucking game design that they gave the player an option to flat out skip an entire level in their game with 9 levels, which happens in the first mission as well, where you can just jump onto the rail car. So counting the Clockwork Mansion, A Long Day in Dumble, and the Dust District means that an entire third of Dishonored 2 is just entirely skippable if you know what you're doing. Arcane is also just so good at environmental storytelling and making you feel like you're uncovering things in a level for yourself rather than the reality of the situation, which is running into scripted events, because they're just so good at subtly guiding the player that it should genuinely be considered black magic. On my first playthrough of literally every single level of Dishonored 1 and 2, I was always rewarded with some sort of loot or path to my objective that felt like I crafted and discovered my own unique path through this level, when in reality I was just blindly stumbling through everything. But Arcane somehow knew all of the potential ways players move through a level and provided unique experiences along all those countless paths, which is insane because the game absolutely does kind of nudge you in certain directions. For example, in the first level they tell you to go to the black market, and while you're exploring around the black market, you'll find people next to the Bloodfly building talking about how it's a way through to the other side, or running into Mindy, who'll act as a very shallow and boring introduction to the Howler and Overseer conflict. And Arcane deliberately put all of these things next to each other so you'd run into them, but because they didn't put a big fucking arrow over every possible opportunity and entrance to a level, I feel like I was unraveling a puzzle discovering all of those things. I mean, my first playthrough, it took me 2 hours of just exploring and really figuring and seeing where everything was just to get to the other side of the Bloodfly building. This is made even better by the inclusion of neutral zones throughout the game, which are a great addition, although I wish they were just a bit more, since they help to convey that despite the corrupt police force, awful working conditions, and self-obsessed monarch, Karnaca is still just a city that regular everyday people live in. And even if I prefer Dunwall as a city, I'm not going to deny that being able to just walk around and somewhat interact with citizens and see how they live their lives was extremely immersive. And also, my favorite mission from the first game is Lady Boyle's last party, for a million different reasons I won't bore you with, but one of them is the fact that I'm pretty sure it's the only mission where you can just walk around in plain sight and feel like another civilian. And the last thing when it comes to the positives in gameplay is custom difficulty. After 3 New Game Plus playthroughs, I realized that I enjoy the borderline realistic enemy perception, more aggressive guards, and overall increased challenge on very hard difficulty, but I didn't enjoy not being able to fully regenerate health health and mana from potions and elixirs. I don't know, it just feels like too much of a kick in the dick considering you lose half your health to one hit, and then the healing items barely restore even that. And also, I always just end up crafting bone charms to negate those effects, which end up taking up 2 slots that could have been used for helping balance the other 40 things actively working against me. And custom difficulty is great for that. I genuinely cannot overstate just how much I love this feature. And not only should every game ever made from 2016 onwards have this feature, but every developer needs to retroactively go back and update their games to have this feature. I want to see custom difficulty going as far back as Zork the Great Underground Empire by this fiscal quarter's end. Circling back to touch base on some of the things about gameplay I don't enjoy, since we're already kind of talking about New Game Plus, it seems as good a time as any to mention some problems that arise from it. Don't get me wrong, New Game Plus is a great feature, and I love being able to actually afford all the powers on one playthrough, because having to pick and choose powers in the first game, only for some of them to end up not even fully upgraded by the end, was kind of annoying. Along with the fact that you can choose a save file to use for New Game Plus and then pick a separate save slot to save over, which is super convenient because here I have my original save for my first playthrough, my low chaos New Game Plus slot, and then the third one on the bottom is my no powers run. So if I decided, hey, I want to save over my no powers run because what fucking New Game Plus benefits does that provide me, and also I want low and high chaos New Game Plus saves, I can, which is great. However, I wish that you were able to keep Corrupt and Black Bone Charms along with upgrades in New Game Plus. Like, I've beat the game 7 times. If I get to stockpile 172 runes in every single Bone Charm effect, then just give me all of them. Let me reap the fruits of my unemployment. It's not even as if some of them are valuable enough to break the game or anything either. Like Wolfhounds not being able to smell you, there's like, I think 2 levels that use them. If I had to guess, I'll put the number, but I don't know, but it isn't nearly enough to be useful. Running out of breath, reducing mana before health, there's like, there's like barely any levels with water in the first place, and you won't ever be underwater long enough to where it'll matter. And then not being affected by knockdowns, literally not once in all of my 3 high chaos playthroughs have I been knocked down in combat. And also, one of the main appeals of Dishonored is being able to play however you want, and locking a whole layer of customization for builds that could potentially alter an entire playthrough behind randomized item spawns, even on New Game Plus, feels unnecessary. Even if some people prefer the random Corrupt and Black Bone Charm spawns on repeat playthroughs, there should still be an option for people like me who highly enjoy making broken combinations in games after being scared of every single enemy for their first 20-hour low chaos playthrough. There's something else that gets annoying on multiple playthroughs. I want powers in a crack in this lab. Don't get me wrong, the timepiece is an amazing idea on your first playthrough, and like I said with the Clockwork Mansion, I could literally feel my brain overclocking while playing it, just attempting to figure out what the fuck was happening. But on your 8th playthrough, when you have everything unlocked, it gets annoying having to only be able to use gadgets in the timepiece, since there's only so many gameplay scenarios that can occur as a result of it. And also, the 3 separate times you're stopped in a crack in the slab to have exposition done on you are obnoxious, because they don't technically count as cutscenes, so you can't skip them. It's just that thing games do where they don't want to have it be a standard cutscene, so you can move around but you can't really do anything else, you know? Despite Dishonored 2 being really good about letting you skip every cutscene even on your first playthrough. And after my 3rd New Game Plus, I just ended up playing fucking push mode during these sections. And on the subject of forced cutscenes, man, is replaying levels through the dedicated missions option obnoxious, since it'll start you before the missions and include all the respective cutscenes before the mission. Like how if you want to replay Edge of the World, you need to go through the Outsider cutscene where you get your powers, then the tutorial for Blink and Runes, which means that if you want to replay this mission on New Game Plus, you'll have to repurchase all of your powers and enhancements, and then go through the mission brief and cutscene with Megan, or with the Grand Palace, where you need to go through the cutscene with Jessamine, the brief of Megan, the loading screen, then the cutscene with Megan where you're approaching the docks, and then you can start the mission, which made getting footage for this video so much fucking fun. I'm really telling you, and I find this so infuriating, because on missions like the Good Doctor, it's not as if you need to replay Edge of the World to start it. All you need to do is skip 2 cutscenes, which is still obnoxious and they shouldn't be there. But anyway, once you skip those, you're at Adamire. And the same is true with a crack in the slab. You just start right in front of Silton's mansion. I know you can just make dedicated saves in each save slot to avoid this, but you shouldn't have to in the first place. If the game gives you an option to replay a mission after you beat it, it should start you at the beginning of that fucking mission, rather than placing you before it with all the exposition included. good. And if you're still stupid enough to think I'm crazy on this, they literally included a mode on Bethesda.net if you logged in with your stupid fucking account, where you could play the game and skip all the dreadful whale sections. And to list off some small critiques to end this section. First, the fact that overseers don't have their music boxes anymore makes them just feel like guards who all have guns and dogs instead of this fanatical and extremist cult. What made dealing with overseers in the first game so fun is how they were equipped to deal with almost all of the shit you usually use to get the job in regular guards, such as them wearing masks to protect their faces from direct headshots, dogs to sniff you out so you can't just blink behind them, and of course the music boxes, which on top of providing a layer of strategy during gameplay also just sounded fucking sick and helped contribute to Dishonored 1's unique sound design. And before you say it, because I know you fucking will, yes, I'm already fully aware for the in-universe quote-unquote reason given for them not having boxes anymore, of oh they're too expensive to make, but I don't buy any of that. It just feels lazy and they just didn't want to include them anymore. But maybe I'm in the minority and a lot of people hated them, but I personally love them. Second, why doesn't Megan pick you up at the docks in the Grand Palace? And third, gotta say, did not care for Corvo's design in this game. My little emo boy turned into a dilf, which is great, but where is his hood? Why is his hair just hanging out back there? Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like the plot from the first game was some fucking Shakespearean high art. The premise was engaging enough, and it served its purpose of giving Corvo motivation for what he was doing, and that's really it. I didn't really care because it was never particularly bad, it was just serviceable. When it comes to video game plots, I need them to either be amazing, serviceable, or so bad they're good, like Fire Emblem Conquest, which, oh my fucking god, I can't wait to make a video on that 5 years from now. But Dishonored 2's story is so painfully mediocre that I wasn't able to just brush it aside like I could with the first game. For starters, the story is the exact same as Dowd's DLC from the first game, from Delilah wanting to create a painting of her ideal world and the non-lethal options to deal with her being the exact same. The only difference is that Delilah doesn't know she's trapped this time. Yeah, test running. You weren't supposed to just copy the Dowd DLC's entire premise and let it for a second game. I know there were never originally plans for a second game, and Dishonored 2 is Arcane's first sequel, but Jesus Christ, this shit is ridiculous. If you've played Dowd's DLC, which I have to death because they have my favorite levels in the entire series, then you'll pretty much already know everything about Delilah as a character and her motives, and anything new added isn't particularly interesting enough to keep me engaged. And despite being a direct retelling of its story, Dishonored 2's version still falls short, because the thing that made Delilah so interesting in Dowd's DLC is that she was a direct mirror and foil to Dowd, where they both just basically have their own Fight Club cults, and comparing how they manage their organizations and seeing them pitted against each other was really fun and engaging. Dowd was way more hands-on, while Delilah was a lot more behind the scenes. And also the fact that Delilah's appearances were sprinkled throughout the DLC, whereas Delilah is absent for most of the story in 2, since there's only really a few interactions with her after the beginning of the game and in between when you confront her. Her statue talking to you in the Royal Conservatory and the final mission are entirely missable, and the first one's treated as a special side objective. And the only reason I found them is because I played Dowd's DLC and I knew about this trick. In that DLC, Delilah being able to see through statues made her feel intimidating because it played into the underlying theme of her being this borderline omnipresent figure that was working behind the scenes of everything happening in the first game. It was a great way to not only write in a new villain, but also add to her character with narrative constraint of Delilah not being directly mentioned or involved in the base game's plot. Because Arcane made Delilah's whole threat as a villain her ability to possess people and manipulate them into getting what she wants, like with Barrister Timsh and the Will, or the painting of Emily she plans to use to rule the Empire without anyone else knowing. I mean, fuck's sake, the whole selling point of the DLC initially is that all you know about Delilah is her name. Delilah's coven ambushes you in the Dead Eels. You can overhear two Dead Eels talk about feeling as if they're being watched and seeing one on a roof just standing there before disappearing. And one of Dowd's assassins even mentions that he's put a pair of eyes on them and that they're being watched, which both successfully creeped me the fuck out on my first playthrough. But on top of that, there's notes you can find of witches telling each other to block off paths so that Dowd can't get through the sewers. And you can even see the witch in question that the two Dead Eels and the assassin were talking about if you're quick enough. The lack of direct screen time and the different witch encounters and NPC dialogue perfectly contribute into successfully making Delilah feel like the manipulative, shadowy, behind-the-scenes figure that she's supposed to be. And I don't say all of that to imply that Delilah is a good character or a villain. Delilah as a character rather than a concept is at most fine in Dowd's DLC, but fine is still better than boring, which is exactly what she is in Dishonored 2. And also, Delilah was never confirmed to be Jessamine's sister in Big More Witches, and the fact that she was rewritten to be Jessamine's sister for the second game isn't even really dramatic or interesting enough of a plot twist to carry the game, since it isn't as if Delilah had some ideal view for the Empire that clashed with Jessamine's or was ignored. No, Delilah wants power simply because she didn't have it as a child and just wants to kill people and do whatever she wants. There's no twists in the story, like the loyalist betraying you, or Corvo being revealed as Emily's dad. Not that I want those exact same twists again, but just any sort of tension or camaraderie between the characters would have been appreciated, but no. Dishonored 2 is just a straightforward Delilah's bad again and there's another coup where you're framed for some fuck shit. Which means that even though Emily is the canon main character, I'll get to her in a bit, there's no development for Corvo since he's already been through what happened. He doesn't learn anything about himself or undergo some massive personal journey, it's just another day clocking in at 8 and leaving at 4 p.m. I enjoy his small commentary on things like how he used to throw rocks at bloodfly nests and how he won the Blade Verbena, but that's really all he adds. And this ties into the gameplay section because on one hand, it's amazing just how detailed each level is and how you can easily miss so many small things. But things being missable is great only if the core plot experience is engaging and fun. But with how shallow the plot and characters are, the game really needs all it can get to help elevate its plot to be at least passable. I mean, the dramatic reveal of Jessamine's spirit being taken from the heart and replaced with Delilah should have been a dramatic moment because it's Corvo and Emily finally saying goodbye to this person they love. But just the voice acting and the performance is so flat, and I know the actors are more than capable of delivering emotion in the scene, and I just don't know why they decided to make it delivered so flat. And that's just in the main plot, because there's so many small things that feel like they should be important to, like I said, make the plot at least passable. Because you'd think finding Corvo's childhood home, or Emily finding Dowd's audio log that sheds light on his feelings about killing the Empress would be big moments in the plot, but they both just ring hollow. If you go out of your way to find Dowd's audio log, regardless if you're Emily or Corvo, neither of them have any dialogue about it, which is so baffling to me because there's so many small details that they accounted for every little thing. Like Jindosh has 9 different pieces of dialogue when you kill Clockwork, but when Emily finds the person who killed her mother and their feelings on it, or when Corvo hears about Dowd again after the first game, there's just nothing. Like, it doesn't change the ending, there's just nothing. It's just nothing. Oh yeah, and Emily. I said I'd get to her later. She's boring on either chaos. That's really it. You don't see any of Corvo or Emily's dynamic at all in the main story. The only real showcase of their relationship is during the optional tutorial to only ever play once. Other than that, they have literally 0 lines of dialogue together other than the beginning and end of the story. There's no flashbacks or post-credit scene of them together, nothing. And I was really looking forward to at least something to see how their relationship and dynamic have developed in the first game. And also compared to the first game, there's no memorable side characters in the main plot or sprinkled throughout levels to give the world any personality. Again, they weren't interesting, but Havelock, Pendleton, Martin, Piero, Callisto all helped attempt to give that first game some sort of personality. And there's also the whole Slackjaw and Granny Rag storyline throughout every level. And he wasn't a main character, but the weird fucking guy at the Golden Cat where he's got like random dialogue saying that like you're fatter. It was fucking funny. And you know, the first game was depressing, but it had just small goofy moments like that sprinkled throughout. Like I don't think the second game's ever made me laugh. But in Dishonored 2, the only extra characters Emily really has to bounce off of are Aramis Stilton and Hypatia, but they disappear just as quickly as they're introduced. Paolo sucks, and you may think there'd be just at least some attempt at nuance where, oh, he may have cruel methods, but in the end, he always wants to help the common person, but that's immediately negated by the fact that the Howlers harass citizens for money. Mindy is fucking so boring, and it's really weird that she's the only non-target and allied character that's considered a key figure, because the only other interaction with Mindy is in the Dust District, where if you helped her and then decide to help Paolo, you can see her at the Crone's Hand Saloon, and also her tattoo parlor is in the level. Lucia Pastor is forgettable. I fucking completely forgot about her until this video. And even your quote-unquote main side characters of Sokolov and Megan are just as boring as the main hub, which I guess I didn't mention, but yeah, the Dreadful Whale fucking sucks. It's boring. It's just boring. Like, there's nobody there. There's nothing to really discover other than like runes every now and then and like helping out around the ship to get rid of butterflies. And maybe that was used to help convey how like alone Emily is, where it's just her and Megan, but it could have been slightly more interesting, but it just, I never wanted to explore it, and I never looked around and enjoyed being there like I did with the Hound Pits pub. I only ever wanted to leave the Dreadful Whale, never wanted to stay there. Anyway, Megan and Sokolov have absolutely 0 personality, and even on high chaos, all they really do is say slightly more disapproving lines in the exact same tone of voice that they use to praise you for showing restraint for your entire low chaos playthrough. And on both chaoses, Sokolov says, "I've come to question the legitimacy of words like deserve," before the final mission with Delilah. and the fact that you can kill Megan and Sokolov, and also that you can take the throne as Corvo, are all choices that are all unbelievably out of left field and make zero sense even on high chaos. And I haven't even mentioned the Crown Killer mystery yet, but my thoughts on it are the exact same as my thoughts on Emily. It's boring, underdeveloped, and wasn't given the proper time to shine. And I really don't mean to just judge Dishonored 2 based off what I enjoyed from the first game, but as I mentioned near the beginning of the video, Dishonored 2 goes for the exact same tone as the first game, so it makes sense to critique something which copies a story and setting you've already seen done better in a previous installment. Maybe instead of another city in the midst of political corruption, with an increasing death toll caused by a large group of pests, with awful working conditions, and one district that's been entirely abandoned by the monarch, where our main character is framed for murder, it would have been cool to see a city in the process of getting fucked up, and working to prevent those things from happening again. Obviously, this is just a concept I spent 10 seconds thinking about and will pose a whole slew of challenges when developing, but I feel like it could help to give Corvo and Emily some more development and tie in the events of the first game better, instead of both of them basically just saying, oh yeah, this is like the rat plague, or I've done this before, I can do it again. It's just like, that's the problem. That isn't a cool line. Speaking of cool lines, this is a random thing. The best line Corvo has in this game is all I need is a name. That shit gave me chills. Sorry. Anyway. I know Emily's whole development in this game is learning to be a more attentive leader, but the fact that she let another city in the Empire get as bad as Dunwall during the fucking rat plague makes it feel as if she just flat out learned nothing from the events of the first game. We do help fix Karnaca, but only after the events have all transpired. We're not preventing anything, we're just stopping things from getting worse than they currently are. For example, I really enjoyed the Clockwork Mansion and the Royal Conservatory, since in the former, we stopped Jindosh from developing more clockwork soldiers and prevent the Duke from creating an army of them. And in the latter, we stop Ashworth's attempt at influencing the Oracular Order's dreams so that they publicly support Delilah. Maybe if the game was more of us taking preventative measures for a coup rather than undoing yet another one and proving our innocence yet again, I would have enjoyed it more. And I don't know, throwing Corvo/Emily into the plot as a side character depending on who you play as and have them work together to stop things from getting worse, so that they actually have some fucking screen time together. Like, I really can't believe that like, there's no screen time at all between Corvo and Emily, other than the beginning, end of the game. And the end of the game is just like a 2-second cutscene where they don't even say anything. I ran out of footage for this next bit, so for the last bit of the script you get rat videos. With all that being said though, Dishonored 2 is still a phenomenal game, and I look back at all my playthroughs incredibly fondly, including my No Powers and Ghost playthroughs. Even if I spent more time navigating menus than actually playing the game in those playthroughs, I still love them. I hope that someday in the future Arcane can make a game that they actually care about instead of a soulless vampire shoot. I can't even say it. If it doesn't feel real, but I really hope they can make a game to care about instead of another soulless vampire looter shooter with trap music. God, fucking Redfall in 2023 as a whole is such a fever dream. But after seeing how much of the studio left after Redfall, my hopes for Dishonored 3 are locked away in the same part of my brain as my hopes for Persona 6 and Elder Scrolls 6.